Welcome, gentle traveler of thoughts and dreams. Tonight, you are invited to rest in the warm glow of a sacred flame, a quiet, ancient light that once flickered in every home, every temple, and every hearth of the Greek world. As the stars slowly take their places in the sky, and the soft hush of the night settles around you, let us drift gently into a quieter time, a time of whispered prayers and glowing embers, of clay ovens and olive groves, of sacred calm and unseen grace. This is the story not of war or thunder, not of triumph or tragedy, but of warmth, of steadiness, of quiet devotion. It is the story of Hestia, goddess of the hearth, first and last among the Olympians, and yet the most often forgotten. But not tonight. Tonight, we follow Hestia, step by gentle step, through a single day in her timeless, undisturbed life. So close your eyes, if you wish. Let your mind soften, your breathing slow. The fire is lit, the night is kind, and the story begins. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to subscribe and like the video, but only if you enjoy what I do here. And write in the comments from where you are and what time it is. Now turn off the lights and fan for the soft background hum. And let's get into the night journey together. The mountain breathes quietly in the early dark. Even before the sun has stirred the sky from blue-black to gray, a stillness rests over Olympus. A silence so complete that even the softest footfall might sound like thunder. Marble temples sleep beneath stars. Vines coil gently around stone, dew clinging to their leaves like silver threads. Nothing moves, except one. Before the first rays of sunlight find their way to the heavens, Hestia is already awake. She moves through the colonnade with a step as soft as wind through olive trees. Draped in pale wool and shadow, she does not disturb the silence. She becomes part of it. Her hair, loosely braided, glows faintly in the starlight, catching the last cool breath of the night. There is no hurry in her walk, no urgency, only rhythm, slow and steady, like the turning of seasons or the breath of the earth itself. She reaches the central hearth of her temple, a round, open space at the heart of Olympus, surrounded by smooth pillars and blanketed in fine dust. The fire here is sacred, eternal, and yet it still needs tending. She kneels. Her fingers, long, bare, and weathered by centuries of gentle work, brush away the ash from the night before. She speaks no words. Her prayer is silent, spoken not aloud, but in action, the folding of kindling, the careful breath she lends to the ember. A single spark. It catches. A soft bloom of gold unfolds in the ash, like a flower waking from slumber. Then another, and another, until the fire is born again, not roaring, not wild, but glowing, contained, calm. This is not the fire of war or destruction. It is the fire of home, the kind that warms bread, that lights lamps for returning suns, that hears lullabies and quiet laughter, and listens, always listens. Hestia sits beside it, her hands resting on her knees, her eyes reflecting the flickering light. She does not need to speak. She simply watches. And slowly, across Olympus, the first signs of life begin to stir. Apollo, still far off, tunes his lyre to morning song. Artemis, pale and wild, returns from the hunt. Zeus remains asleep in his thunderous dreams, and Hera turns once more in her bed of gold. But Hestia, she is already given the gift of light. She leans back slightly and gazes through the open space above her hearth, where the stars are beginning to pale. The mountain is quiet, but no longer still. A bird calls, a breeze shifts, and the day begins. The temple warms by degrees. The stone underfoot sheds its chill. The columns blush with sun. Light pools in corners where shadow has slept, and the first whispers of incense drift upward in lazy curls. A young acolyte enters, robes rustling like leaves. She does not speak. Her presence is gentle, reverent. She bows to Hestia and begins the morning's duties, sweeping the floor, gathering fresh olive oil, arranging small bowls of offerings. Hestia nods, a faint smile passing over her lips like sunlight over stone. The fire crackles softly, not for attention, but in contentment. There is no fanfare here, no dramatic entrance, no blazing thunderbolt or clash of ego. This is a space of stillness, where peace is kindled daily, and warmth is not a spectacle, but a gift. In the homes of mortals, hundreds of miles below, housewives are stirring coals, nursing small flames into morning light. A child rubs sleep from their eyes. A father places a log gently on the hearth before work. In every gesture, in every humble act, Hestia is present. Though they do not see her, though they may forget to name her, she remains. Always, as the sun lifts further into the sky, casting Olympus in honeyed gold, the goddess of the hearth rises. The fire is strong now. It needs little tending. She steps back and lets the morning unfold around it. Other gods will come and go. Priests will chant. Visitors will arrive. But the hearth remains, unmoving, undemanding, alive. And Hestia, too, remains, quiet, steady, enduring. In every ancient home, there was a center, not of walls or roofs, but of meaning. A place where the flicker of a flame lived not just to warm or cook, but to connect. It glowed quietly in the middle of life's turning seasons, anchoring memory, ritual, and rest. This place, this quiet and glowing center, was the hearth. And at the heart of the hearth was Hestia. She was not a goddess of thunder or war. She did not carry spears, nor ride into battle on chariots drawn by lions. Hestia had no beasts, no roaring cymbals, no great temples filled with blood and clamor. Her presence was found in something far smaller, and perhaps far greater. A clay bowl filled with coals, a single flame dancing in a simple stone circle, the soft warmth of home. For the Greeks, the hearth was not simply a tool. It was a sacred place. Even the word for hearth, Hestia, bore her name. She was invoked in the lighting of lamps, in the preparation of meals, in the birth of children, and in the burial of the dead. Her fire was the first to be lit in a home, and the last to be extinguished when a family left. To understand Hestia, we must look not upward toward Olympus, but inward, into the quiet rhythm of domestic life, into the hands of mothers who kneaded bread, into the dim-lit halls of homes in which children slept, their faces bathed in the glow of a dying fire. She was the stillness in the center of chaos, the breath taken before speaking, the hush that falls when the first light of morning touches the floor. In every Greek household, a small flame was kept burning on the hearth. It was tended daily, respectfully, often ritually. Families gave offerings of wine, of barley, of olive oil, not in grandeur, but in gratitude. There were no feasts held in her name, no wild dances in her honor. Instead, her presence was woven into the fabric of life, quiet, constant, and sustaining. And yet, she was considered first among the Olympians. In myth, Hestia was the eldest child of Cronus and Rhea, the first to be swallowed by her father and the last to be released when Zeus ended the old reign. This strange duality of being both the first and the last held deep symbolic meaning. It mirrored the way her flame was the first to be lit in any home, and the last to go out. She was the beginning and the end, the opening prayer and the closing word. Even when the world changed, she did not. When gods rose and fell, when cities warred and kings died, when temples crumbled and seas shifted, Hestia remained. Her fire flickered in corners often overlooked, in the shared meals of the weary, in the silent prayer offered before baking bread. She represented constancy. And constancy, in a world of shifting power and mythic violence, was sacred. In Greek political life, the hearth had civic meaning as well. Each city had its own communal hearth, often housed in the Prytaneum, the public hall where leaders met, where foreign guests were welcomed, where decrees were spoken. The fire that burned there was no ordinary flame. It was an extension of Hestia's divine fire, a symbol of unity and stability. When a new colony was founded, a flame was taken from the mother city's hearth and carried across sea and land to be kindled anew, ensuring that the new settlement remained spiritually linked to its origin. The hearth was not only the heart of the home, but of the city, the heart of a people. And wherever that flame burned, Hestia was present not in form, but in feeling. There were no grand statues of her, no elaborate epics. Even in Homer's verses, she is barely named. But perhaps that was by design. Hestia's sacredness lay in her invisibility, in the way she became part of life itself. Like the warmth of fire, she was felt more than seen. She required no altar because she was already there, in every home, in every bowl of soup, in every hush of evening quiet. To honor Hestia was to honor simplicity, to show hospitality, to light a candle for a guest, to keep the fire alive through the night, even when no one was awake to see it. In many ways, she was the goddess of things not spoken, the pauses between stories, the silent prayers, the gentle looks exchanged by family across the table. She did not demand devotion. She accepted it in the form of care, of keeping something warm, tended, and alive. This was not passive. It was profound. Because to tend the hearth was to tend the soul of a household. To protect the space where lives unfolded, where sorrows softened, where laughter echoed against stone walls. And it was not just women who honored her. Warriors, returning from war, would offer a libation to Hestia first, before any other god. Even mighty Zeus gave her pride of place at every feast. She did not seek power, but was always welcomed. She asked for nothing, yet received everything. She was, in essence, home. And what is home, if not the place we long for in quiet moments? Not always a building or a room, but a feeling of warmth, of safety, of familiarity, of a light that waits for us, even in the dark. Hestia reminds us that divinity can live in the smallest things. In a coal glowing softly under ash, in a shared meal, in the stillness of early morning when the rest of the world sleeps. She reminds us that what is overlooked is often most. The sacred fire is never loud. It does not rise with thunder, nor demand attention with sparks or smoke. It grows slowly, like breath filling the lungs, or the first light touching stone. To kindle the sacred fire is not a dramatic act. It is a ritual of patience, a conversation between warmth and care, between intention and memory. And at the center of this ancient practice stands Hestia. In her temple, where the circular hearth sits open to sky and time, the fire has burned longer than memory. Yet even an eternal flame must be tended. It does not roar on its own. It must be fed, cared for, guarded from wind and from neglect. Each morning, before the world has fully stirred, Hestia begins again. She kneels, not as a gesture of submission, but of devotion. Her posture is one of grace, of repetition, of ancient knowledge passed not through words, but through action. The kindling laid out beside her is simple: olive branches gathered from the groves, dried herbs wrapped gently in linen, chips of aromatic wood smoothed by time. Her hands, though divine, work like any woman's, practiced, rhythmic, quiet. She arranges the wood not in haste, but with care. Each piece nestled against the next, like fingers clasped in prayer. Over this she sprinkles a pinch of barley, a trace of frankincense. The old offerings, humble, unchanged. Then she exhales, not deeply, not with force, just a breath, warm and even, like a lullaby sung in silence. The breath catches, the spark blooms, the fire awakens, not in a blaze, but in a pulse, a golden flicker in the heart of the ash. The flame leans forward, then back, like a dancer testing the music of the air. And then, slowly, it settles into life. This is sacred. To light the hearth was one of the most important acts in ancient Greece. It marked the beginning of each day, the rebirth of the home's spirit. In great temples and quiet cottages alike, the process was slow and deliberate. Matches did not exist. Flames had to be kept, borrowed, or coaxed from embers. If a fire went out, it was not just a loss of heat. It was a spiritual breach, a forgotten prayer, a home unmoored. And so, people kindled their fires with care, as Hestia does now. In her presence, the act becomes more than tradition. It becomes a meditation, a returning. Fire, after all, is the element that connects heaven and earth. It rises, dances, consumes, and yet it also comforts. It is both change and constancy. When Hestia kindles the sacred fire, she is not performing a duty. She is reweaving the thread between gods and mortals, between yesterday and today. Each spark is a stitch in the great fabric of life. Outside the temple, the world begins to stir. In homes across the land, echoes of this moment play out in quiet parallel. In a stone house in Athens, a mother rubs two flints together over a bed of straw. The fire she coaxes into being is for her children's breakfast, but also for her grandmother's memory, for the gods, for safety. She speaks Hestia's name without sound. In a small coastal village, an old man keeps a coal alive in a clay pot wrapped in wool. The fire will be used to heat water for his wife's morning tea. He strokes the edge of the pot, grateful that it still burns. His father taught him how to do this. His father's father, too. And in every home where the fire catches, be it from flint, sun, or smoldering twig, there is a moment of silence, a flicker of reverence, an unspoken acknowledgement that this, too, is sacred. Back in Olympus, Hestia stirs the flame gently with a carved olive wood rod. The fire is awake now, warm and breathing. She feeds it slowly, offering not only wood, but meaning. Each stick placed into the hearth is like a verse in a hymn, a line of praise, a line of love. She does not speak, but the fire hears her. As it grows, the shadows retreat. The dome of the sky above the temple begins to shift from indigo to gold. Birds call from distant fig trees. Wind teases the edges of the goddess's robe. Still, she stays with the fire. It is not enough to light it and walk away. The flame, like all sacred things, requires presence. Like friendship, like family, like faith. To tend the sacred fire is to tend the self, to stay, to nurture, to listen. The fire does not demand spectacle. It asks only for attention, for someone to kneel beside it, again and again, without growing tired. Hestia does not grow tired. Even among the gods, her role is unique. She does not chase glory or power. She does not battle for dominion. Instead, she anchors the divine. She holds the center. She keeps the flame lit so that others may shine. And that is no small thing. To keep something alive, day after day, is a holy task. To protect the fragile, the flickering, the warm, that is the heart of devotion. As the temple brightens, the sacred fire burns cleanly. No smoke, no crackle, only a glow, soft, amber, eternal. Hestia rises from her place. Her hands brush lightly along her robe. She does not look back. She does not need to. The fire will remember her, as it always does. It will speak her name in light, in heat, in the gentle hush that surrounds it. Every flicker, every warmth that reaches the skin will carry her blessing. And wherever someone lights a fire with love, she will be there, watching, warming, waiting. In the hush of the mid-morning light, long after the first spark has been fed and the sacred fire glows steadily in the heart of the temple, a gentle ritual begins. There is no summons, no trumpets or proclamation, just the soft echo of sandaled footsteps and the faintest scent of barley, warm and sweet, drifting on the breeze. Offerings are being prepared. The temple of Hestia is not lavish. It is not adorned with gold statues or carved friezes of battle scenes. Instead, its beauty lies in its quietness, in the smoothness of the worn floor stones, the delicate ash scattered in concentric patterns around the hearth, and the wooden trays that hold the morning's humble gifts. A young woman enters, robed in unbleached linen, her arms cradling a shallow bowl made of clay. She approaches the hearth slowly, her eyes lowered, her breath steady. The bowl contains round loaves of bread, barley loaves, baked over embers, firm and rustic. Their scent is earthy and comforting, like the sun-warmed fields from which the grain was harvested. Beside the bread is a small vessel of honey, golden and thick, collected from hives tended near the olive groves. It glows faintly in the light, viscous and slow, like amber brought to life. She kneels before the flame, and without a word, offers the bread and the honey. In the ancient world, these were not just food. They were symbols. Bread represented sustenance, the work of hands, of fields, of family. Honey, with its sweetness and golden hue, represented blessing, something rare and treasured, preserved through care. Together, they embodied the very essence of the hearth, nourishment and warmth. These offerings are not extravagant. They do not need to be. Hestia is not a goddess who demands grand displays. She receives what is given from the heart, the heel of a warm loaf, the first drizzle of spring honey, a pinch of flour from the morning's baking. And in return, she gives something invaluable, presence. In a world of gods who crash like thunder and roar across the sky, Hestia's power is quiet. She listens. She watches. She accepts. In many homes across Greece, these offerings were mirrored in miniature. Before each meal, a few crumbs of bread were tossed into the fire. A splash of wine poured onto the coals. A silent thank you. An everyday gesture that linked the mortal to the divine. To those who honored her, Hestia gave not riches, but steadiness. Peace. The kind of peace found only in familiar things. The scent of baking bread, the sound of firewood settling into embers, the quiet hum of bees among thyme blossoms. Back in the temple, the young woman lifts the honey vessel and tips it gently. A golden thread pours slowly onto the bread, pooling in the shallow dips of its surface. The smell rises, warm grain and floral sweetness mingling in the air. She places the loaf on the offering stone beside the hearth. Her hands rest on her knees for a moment. There is no priest directing her, no chorus chanting in the background. This is a personal act, one she has done every day since she entered Hestia's service. And every time, it feels the same, like peace. Outside, the day continues. Merchants call in the agora. Oxen pull carts down the road. The sun climbs higher, washing the columns of the temple in golden light. But here, inside the sacred space, time slows. The fire does not flicker or roar. It hums. Content. A steady breath. The bread will remain there for a while, warmed by the fire. The honey will seep slowly into its crevices. Later, when the offerings have been received, when enough time has passed to acknowledge the goddess, the bread may be removed, broken apart, and shared among those in service. To eat what was offered is not desecration. It is communion, the blessing received in full circle, given, accepted, returned. Sometimes, other offerings are added. A bowl of ripe figs, their skins dark and shining. A sprig of rosemary or bay, freshly cut. A small piece of cheese wrapped in fig leaf. All of it speaks a single truth. The sacred resides in the simple. To offer what is humble, and to do so with care, is one of the oldest forms of prayer. And Hestia receives it all, not for the thing itself, but for the heart behind it. Elsewhere on Olympus, the gods argue and feast. Hermes races messages through the clouds. Aphrodite examines her reflection in a still pool. Ares sharpens his blade. Zeus prepares for an audience. But Hestia watches a loaf of bread cool beside her fire. She watches as the young woman tidies the offering tray and rises. As she bows once, lightly, and retreats from the room. As the shadows shift around the pillars. As the fire glows on. She does not need to speak. She never has. Her language is warmth. And through the daily offerings of bread, of honey, of silence, her presence is renewed. Even now, thousands of years since her name was last widely spoken, her spirit lingers. In every kitchen where bread is broken, in every flame lit with intention, in every meal offered in kindness, she remains. The temple of Hestia is unlike any other on Mount Olympus. Where some temples rise proudly with towering columns and intricate carvings, hers is simple and unassuming. It is a place of stillness and gentle light, a refuge from the clamor of gods and mortals alike. There is no grand altar crowded with statues, no chorus chanting hymns. Instead, the temple breathes quietly with the pulse of the eternal flame at its center. The building is circular, a soft, embracing shape, as if to hold the warmth safely within its walls. Its stones are smoothed by centuries of reverent hands. The floor is swept clean, dust settling in delicate patterns, undisturbed except by the occasional footfall of a priest or devotee. Here, the air is heavy with the faint scent of olive oil, beeswax, and burn herbs, the essence of offerings and time. The light comes not from massive braziers or chandeliers, but from the gentle flicker of the sacred hearth itself. Its flames dance softly, casting slow-moving shadows that play upon the walls, like memories stirring in the quiet. Hestia herself is felt rather than seen. She is the warmth behind the flame, the steady breath behind the prayers. Though she speaks no words, her presence fills the room like a gentle embrace. The temple welcomes all who seek its peace. Visitors do not enter with loud voices or hurried steps. Instead, they come with quiet feet and bowed heads, offering small gifts of bread or wine, a whispered prayer, or simply their presence. There is no hurry here, no spectacle. Time seems to slow within these walls. The temple becomes a place where thoughts can settle, where the heart can rest. It is a sanctuary not just for gods, but for souls. At the center, the hearth burns steadily, tended with loving care. Its flames hold the warmth of countless dawns and dusks, countless moments of quiet reverence. Priests and priestesses move softly around the space, performing their duties with measured grace. They stoke the fire gently, refresh the offerings, and keep the temple clean. Their robes brush lightly on the stone floor. Their voices are low, sometimes silent. The silence is not empty, but full of respect, devotion, and the sacred. Sometimes, a gentle breeze slips through the open doorway, stirring the incense smoke in lazy spirals. Outside, the world carries on. Thunder rumbles and distant storms. Birds call through groves. The laughter of children echoes faintly. But here, inside the temple, all is calm. It is a place apart from the thunder of Zeus, the fury of Ares, the cunning of Hermes. Here, it is the quiet that reigns. The quiet that is sacred. The quiet that is home. And those who come here feel it. A young woman kneels before the hearth, her hands folded. She breathes in the scent of the fire and feels a calm wash over her. She closes her eyes for a moment, surrendering to the stillness. An old man, visiting from a nearby village, sits silently on a bench. His eyes reflect the flickering firelight. He thinks of his own hearth, miles away, and feels connected through this shared flame. A child, curious and quiet, watches the smoke curl upward. The child does not understand the stories or the gods, but feels safe here, wrapped in the temple's gentle hold. The temple is not about grandeur or spectacle. It is about presence, about being held in a space where the world's noise fades, and the simplest things, warmth, light, silence, become profound. And it is in this quiet that Hestia's true power lies. A power not of conquest, but of constancy. A power not of storms, but of steady flame. A power not of noise, but of peace. Here, in the quiet temple, life's heart beats slow and sure. The flame flickers gently, as if breathing with the earth itself. And the sacred stillness remains. Hospitality, a simple word, yet one steeped in layers of meaning, tradition, and sacredness in the world of ancient Greece. It was more than courtesy or kindness. It was a solemn duty, a ritual woven deeply into the fabric of daily life and divine expectation. At the heart of this ancient custom stood Hestia, goddess of the hearth, protector of the home, and guardian of the sacred flame that welcomed all who crossed a threshold. To open one's door, to light the fire, to prepare a place at the table, these acts were more than practical necessities. They were offerings to the gods, silent prayers woven in warmth and light. Hospitality was a sacred bridge, linking mortal to mortal, mortal to divine, stranger to friend. In every home, the hearth was the center not only of warmth and nourishment, but of welcome. A fire that burned was an invitation. The glow of the hearth was a beacon calling travelers from the road, the stranger seeking refuge, the weary soul yearning for rest. Hestia watched over these moments, blessing those who honored the sacred tradition. She held the flame that bridged lives, binding households in an unspoken contract of care and respect. This was no casual kindness, but a solemn trust. Guests were considered gifts from the gods. and how one treated them reflected the favor or displeasure of Olympus itself. The laws of hospitality, or xenia, were rigid and clear. To refuse shelter or kindness could invite wrath, while welcoming guests with open arms could bring blessings and peace. Within the walls of the quiet temple, these principles were given form and focus. Hestia's flame burned steadily, symbolizing the warmth that a true host offered, unyielding, consistent, and unconditional. Each day, the priests and priestesses reminded visitors of the goddess's charge. They maintained the sacred fire, not only to warm the temple, but as a symbol of the eternal welcome every home should embody. The act of hospitality began with the hearth's light, kindled gently in the early morning, sustained throughout the day and night. The fire was never allowed to die, for it represented the heart's openness. Across the countryside, countless homes echoed this sacred rhythm. A family might prepare a simple meal, fresh bread, olives, figs, placing some aside as a gift for the visitor who might arrive unexpectedly. The fire was tended carefully, ready to welcome whoever came through the door. Strangers were met with kindness, offered water, food, and warmth, not knowing whether they bore the favor of the gods or might be divine messengers themselves. In myth and legend, many gods tested mortals by appearing disguised, and hospitality was the test of character. This sacred trust lived on in stories told by the firesides, passed from parent to child, immortalized in the very essence of Hestia's domain. Even today, echoes of this tradition linger in the quiet moments of welcome and kindness in homes around the world. The ancient flame of hospitality still burns softly in the heart of human connection. In the temple, the eternal hearth glows steadily as a reminder. Its warmth is not just heat, it is invitation, it is blessing, it is a promise. And as the day wanes and the last visitors depart, the fire remains steadfast and patient, awaiting the next guest, the next moment of shared peace. In this, Hestia's sacred role is clear: to keep the hearth of hospitality alive, a quiet guardian of welcome and warmth for all who seek refuge in her gentle light. In ancient Greece, the hearth was much more than just a source of warmth or a place to cook food. It was the sacred heart of the home, a gathering place where the threads of family and community were woven tightly together, flame by gentle flame. The hearth was the steady center around which daily life revolved. It was where children listened wide-eyed to the soft murmur of stories from their elders, where meals were shared in the glow of dancing shadows, and where bonds were quietly forged, strengthened, and renewed. Within its amber light, the invisible walls of the household became tangible, offering shelter not just from the cold, but from the restless winds of the outside world. Here, Hestia's presence was felt most keenly. She was the goddess of stability, the keeper of peace within the walls of family. Her flame was a quiet witness to laughter and tears, to whispered hopes and silent fears. Every evening, as the sun slipped beyond the hills and the sky turned a deep, restful blue, families would gather around the hearth. The warm crackle of firewood, the gentle hum of conversation, and the scent of simmering herbs created a sanctuary of calm amid life's ever-shifting tides. The hearth was where meals were prepared, not just to feed the body, but to nurture the soul. Bread was broken, olives were passed, and wine was shared, each offering a small ritual of gratitude, a recognition of life's simple gifts. As hands reached for food, as voices softened into song or story, the hearth's glow wrapped around all present like a gentle embrace. In many homes, it was customary to reserve a special place for the hearth's fire in their hearts. Fathers might sit close, telling tales of ancestors, teaching lessons of courage and kindness. Mothers would tend to children, wrapping them in stories and warmth. Elders, whose eyes had seen many seasons, sat with quiet dignity, their presence anchoring the family's shared history. Outside the household, the hearth also served as a symbol of the larger community. Villages and neighborhoods were often defined by their common fires, shared spaces where people gathered during festivals, ceremonies, and quiet evenings alike. At these communal hearths, stories and songs passed from generation to generation, preserving the memory of gods and heroes, seasons and cycles. The warmth of these fires bound neighbors together in unspoken solidarity, reminding all that, though lives might differ, the need for connection was universal. Hestia's flame, ever steady and pure, became a symbol of these ties, the invisible threads of family and community woven through shared warmth and light. In homes and temples alike, the hearth was never left to burn alone. It was tended by many hands, protected by many hearts. And so it was that, night after night, in the soft glow of firelight, families found not only shelter from the dark, but a sanctuary of belonging. The hearth became a quiet altar to love and loyalty, a daily reminder that no matter the storms beyond the door, the family's heart remained unbroken. And within this heart, Hestia's presence was both a comfort and a call to hold steady, to nurture gently, to remain true. As the fire's light flickers softly against the worn stones, it whispers a timeless truth, that the greatest warmth is found not just in flames, but in the company we keep. In the soft rhythms of ancient Greek life, the hearth held a sacred place not only within the home, but also in the very fabric of religious ritual and ceremony. It was the quiet, steady flame around which countless moments of reverence and remembrance took form, a silent witness to the sacred dance between mortals and gods. The hearth was where prayers were whispered, offerings made, and promises sealed. It was the altar of everyday divinity, an ever-burning flame that linked the earthly to the divine. In temples dedicated to Hestia, the eternal fire was tended with devotion, its light symbolizing the goddess's unwavering presence and protection. The flame was never allowed to falter, for to let it die was to invite chaos and imbalance. Priests and priestesses moved with reverent care, stoking the fire with slow, purposeful hands, scattering small offerings of incense, grains, and oil upon the glowing embers. These acts were not grand or ostentatious. There were no soaring hymns or dramatic gestures. Instead, the rituals surrounding the hearth were marked by simplicity and grace, a slow, steady unfolding of sacred intent. At festivals and household ceremonies alike, the hearth was the heart of worship. Families gathered to honor the gods, to mark life's milestones, and to ask for blessings in the quiet glow of the fire. Before a meal, a morsel might be offered to the flame, a piece of bread, a drop of wine, a gesture of thanks and connection. In these moments, the boundary between mortal and divine blurred, the fire acting as a bridge. During marriages, births, and funerals, the hearth's flame was present, a witness and participant in the sacred cycle of life and death. Its steady light offered comfort and continuity, reminding all that life's changes are held within an eternal flame. Even in times of war or unrest, the hearth remained a symbol of home's enduring sanctuary. Soldiers might carry embers from their family hearths to kindle new fires, preserving the sacred warmth of their origins amidst the chaos. In ancient cities, public hearths burned in communal spaces, their fires tended by the community as a shared responsibility and sacred trust. The slow, rhythmic tending of these flames was itself a form of prayer, a meditation on balance, respect, and continuity. Each flicker of the hearth fire told a story, of devotion kept alive, of family bonds preserved, of the unbroken thread between past and present. Hestia's flame was a quiet reminder that amid life's storms, there is always a place of calm, a light that never wavers. In the stillness of the temple, the hearth's glow reflected softly on stone and flesh alike. Here, every spark was sacred, every ember a blessing. The rituals of the hearth teach us that holiness can be found not only in grandeur, but in the simple, slow acts of care, in tending a flame, offering a gift, sharing a moment of silence. They invite us to slow down, to notice the small lights around us, and to honor the enduring warmth of connection and presence. And so, as the day drifts quietly onward, and the fire in Hestia's temple burns with steady grace, we are reminded of the power held in calmness and care. The sacred hearth is not just a place. It is a living symbol of all that holds us steady in our homes, in our communities. The hearth was more than a simple source of warmth and light in ancient Greek homes. It was a faithful companion throughout the changing seasons of life. It marked the passage of days and years, its steady flame weaving together the rhythm of daily tasks and the cycles of nature. As dawn's pale fingers brushed the sky, the hearth was stirred awake with gentle care. Its first embers were coaxed back to life, ready to cradle the morning's bread as it baked and to boil water for the day's first meal. The hearth's warmth was a silent partner in every household chore, from preparing food to mending clothes. Its glow illuminated quiet moments, the weaving of wool, the reading of letters, the soft lull of lullabies sung to children nestled close. In spring, as the earth softened and flowers burst forth, the hearth was a place of renewal. Old ashes were swept away, the fire was rekindled with fresh kindling, and offerings of new grain and honey were presented in quiet gratitude. The flame symbolized life's return, the rebirth of warmth after winter's chill. Summer days brought longer hours of light, but the hearth remained a central gathering place. Though the sun's heat might lessen the need for fire's warmth, the hearth's flame still flickered in the evenings, a place to share stories and meals as the sky deepened into dusk. In autumn, as the leaves turned golden and the air cooled, the hearth's importance grew once more. It became a refuge from the encroaching chill, a place where families gathered to prepare preserved foods and weave blankets to guard against the coming cold. The fire's glow was a promise of comfort and continuity, a steady pulse in the shortening days. Winter was when the hearth truly shone as the heart of the home. Its fire was vital, a source of heat, light, and hope. Against the dark and cold, the steady flames pushed back the night. The hearth's warmth nurtured bodies and spirits alike, its smoke curling upward as an offering to Hestia, a prayer for safety through the harsh season. Across the landscape, villages and towns shared this ancient bond with the hearth. Though homes differed in size and style, all honored the sacred flame that sustained them. The hearth was a place of endurance, a quiet witness to the cycles of planting, harvest, celebration, and rest. Throughout the year, the hearth marked both the ordinary and the extraordinary. It was present in moments of joy, a newborn's first cry, a wedding feast, and moments of sorrow, farewells, and funerals, when flames flickered low in mourning. In every season, the hearth's flame was a steady companion, offering warmth, light, and the promise of return. It was a reminder that life moves in cycles, and through every change, the hearth remains. Its fire burns on, a quiet guardian of time, memory, and home. And in its glow, the presence of Hestia is ever near, constant, comforting, eternal. In the grand pantheon of ancient Greek gods, where thunder and passion often roared, Hestia's presence was a gentle and steady flame. She was the oldest of the Olympians, a figure of quiet dignity, whose power was woven into the very foundation of divine and mortal worlds alike. Unlike gods who commanded storms, war, or love's fierce fire, Hestia ruled over the hearth, a symbol of home, stability, and sacred continuity. Her role was not to captivate with dazzling displays or loud proclamations, but to sustain with enduring warmth and calm presence. Within the marble halls of Mount Olympus, amidst the clamor of gods and goddesses, Hestia's temple was the most unassuming. Her seat at the divine table was always held, a place of honor, yet she chose to withdraw from quarrels and conflicts, preferring silence and peace. Legend tells that when the great contest for Olympus's throne arose among Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, Hestia voluntarily stepped aside, offering her claim so the balance of power might remain undisturbed. This act of selflessness marked her not as lesser, but as a pillar of harmony. Her flame was the sacred center, the point around which the chaos of divine drama circled and settled. It was said that wherever Hestia's fire burned, peace reigned. In the daily rituals of the gods, she was the one who lit the communal hearth on Olympus, the flame that never faltered. Other deities would enter her sacred space to kindle their own fires or seek the blessing of her calm presence before embarking on their deeds. Though often unseen in mythic tales of heroism and conflict, Hestia's role was quietly vital. She upheld the order of the divine family, ensuring the flame of connection between gods and mortals burned strong and steady. In the homes of mortals, Hestia was honored in every meal, every fire tended with care. She was invoked with gratitude before the first light of day and in the closing moments of night, a silent guardian of daily life's sacred rhythms. Her presence was a reminder that amidst life's tumult and change, there exists a place of rest and constancy, a place where the flame is kept alive, a place where all may find warmth and peace. And so, in the pantheon of gods known for grandeur and power, Hestia stands apart, not by loud command, but by quiet grace. Her flame is the heart of Olympus, the unseen force that holds together the divine and the mortal, the eternal and the fleeting. In her gentle light, we find not spectacle, but sanctuary. The hearth was far more than just a practical necessity in ancient Greek homes. It was the heart, the very soul of domestic life. Its sacred significance echoed beyond the flame itself, shaping the design of houses, the rhythm of daily activities, and the rituals that marked both ordinary moments and sacred occasions. In every Greek household, the hearth was carefully placed at the center of the home. It was often located within the andron or main living room, a space where the family gathered not only to cook and eat, but to share stories, rest, and connect. The home was built around this vital heart, its rooms arranged so that warmth and light radiated outward. The stone hearth itself was typically simple but sturdy, a circle or square of carefully laid stones or clay set upon the floor. Its design invited the tending hands of family members, making it accessible and central. Its smoke, gently rising through a specially designed opening in the roof or through a chimney, carried with it the scent of hearth fires, mingling with the smells of food and fresh air, blending domesticity with the natural world. Architectural features of Greek homes also reflected the sacred nature of the hearth. Many houses had an open courtyard that allowed fresh air and light to enter, supporting the hearth smoke ventilation and emphasizing the balance between interior warmth and the outdoor world. The layout encouraged family members to gather naturally around the hearth, promoting intimacy and shared experience. It was here, in this warm circle of light, that many of life's quiet dramas unfolded: the weaving of wool, the preparation of meals, the teaching of children. Beyond the private home, the influence of the hearth extended to public spaces and urban planning. Temples and communal buildings often featured hearths or fire pits where citizens could come together for ceremonies, discussions, and celebrations. The design of these spaces mirrored the home's central warmth, reminding all that community, like family, was founded on shared fire and shared purpose. In daily life, the hearth was the axis around which routines turned. Morning began with lighting or rekindling the fire, an act that signaled the start of a new day. The cooking of bread and meals was performed here, nourishing bodies and souls. Evening brought the family back to the hearth's embrace, where stories were told and silence shared, where worries could be softened and hopes quietly nurtured. In winter, the hearth was especially vital, a sanctuary from the cold. Families huddled close, drawing warmth from both flame and each other. The sacred nature of the hearth also influenced social customs. Guests were welcomed into the warm glow of the fire, offered food and drink as a sign of respect and goodwill, a living tradition of Xenia, the ancient code of hospitality. In many ways, the hearth was a living symbol, a glowing heart not only of the home but of the culture itself. It embodied values of stability, care, and connection that formed the foundation of Greek society. To tend the hearth was to honor these values, to nurture the bonds that held families and communities together. And so, as the flames flicker softly in the quiet of an ancient home, they speak not only of warmth but of centuries of life lived gently around their light. They tell the story of how a simple fire shaped architecture, family, and the very way of being. And through it all, Hestia's sacred flame endures, a quiet witness to the unfolding of human history. The quiet flame that Hestia tended so faithfully in the heart of ancient Greece did not fade with the passing of time. Instead, it left a gentle, enduring mark on the cultures and traditions that followed, a legacy woven deep into the fabric of human life across centuries and continents. Though the worship of Hestia herself became less central with the rise of new gods and changing religions, the essence of her sacred hearth lived on in many forms. In the Roman world, for instance, her counterpart was Vesta, the goddess of the hearth and home. Like Hestia, Vesta was revered as a guardian of the family and the city, with a flame that burned perpetually in her temple in Rome, tended by the Vestal Virgins. This eternal flame symbolized the life and security of the entire community, much as Hestia's did for the Greeks. The rituals of the Vestal Virgins, their solemn duty to protect the sacred fire, echoed the same reverence for continuity, purity, and the sacred warmth that Hestia embodied. Beyond Rome, the concept of a sacred hearth found reflections in many cultures around the world. From the eternal fires kept burning in temples of ancient Persia to the fire rituals of Celtic and Nordic peoples, the symbolism of fire as a source of life, community, and divine presence was nearly universal. In many traditions, the hearth remained the heart of the home, a place where families gathered, where offerings were made, and where the boundary between human and divine was thin. The importance of the hearth also influenced domestic architecture across cultures. The central fireplace, a common feature in homes from medieval Europe to East Asia, carried the spirit of Hestia's flame, a steady source of warmth and a gathering point for families. Even in modern times, echoes of Hestia's sacred fire can be felt. The hearth remains a powerful symbol in literature, art, and ceremony, a metaphor for home, safety, and the nurturing of life's quiet moments. In some cultures, the lighting of a fire marks significant occasions, weddings, births, and festivals, a ritual gesture that honors connection, continuity, and hope. The gentle act of tending a fire, of sharing its warmth with others, reminds us of the values that Hestia held dear: care, constancy, and the quiet power of presence. In an age of rapid change and noise, the legacy of Hestia's flame invites us to slow down and cherish the simple, steady sources of light and warmth in our own lives. Her story, though ancient, continues to whisper through the ages, a reminder that amid all the complexity of human history, there is a timeless need for home, for hearth, and for the sacred glow that holds us together. And so, as the fire burns low in a modern hearth or the flicker of a candle marks a moment of reflection, the spirit of Hestia lives on, a quiet guardian watching over the heart's flame, inviting us always to gather close and find peace. Throughout the ancient world, the hearth was far more than a physical place of warmth and light. It was a powerful symbol woven deeply into myth, legend, and storytelling, a quiet beacon representing home, family, and the sacred ties that bind. In countless tales passed from generation to generation, the hearth often stood as the heart of the story's world, a place of refuge, of beginnings and endings, and of transformation. For ancient Greeks, the hearth was where the mortal and divine met. It was around the hearth fire that stories of gods and heroes were told, stories that taught lessons of virtue, loyalty, and the eternal cycle of life. The slow dance of the flames seemed to mirror the unfolding of fate itself, flickering unpredictably yet bound by an invisible order, just as human lives and the gods' plans intertwined. In the Homeric epics, for example, the hearth features prominently as a symbol of home and continuity. The longing of Odysseus to return to the hearth of his household in Ithaca drives much of the Odyssey's narrative, a yearning not just for place, but for peace and belonging. The hearth's flame becomes a symbol of hope, a light in the darkness of his long journey, a promise that the bonds of family and home endure despite trials and separation. Other myths portray the hearth as the sacred center of divine hospitality. When gods disguised as mortals visit unsuspecting households, it is often the hearth fire that reveals a family's honor or failing. How they tend this flame reflects their respect for the gods and the customs that bind society. Stories also explore the hearth's role in ritual and sacrifice, emphasizing its power as a bridge between worlds. Offerings placed into the fire are transformed, carrying prayers upward to the divine realms, binding the living and the dead in a shared sacred space. Beyond Greek myth, the hearth's symbolism echoes in folklore and storytelling around the world. In many cultures, the fire represents the pulse of life itself, the sacred flame of creation, renewal, and transformation. Folktales often begin or end around a hearth, where a family gathers, a wise elder speaks, or magic stirs in the embers. The hearth fire becomes a storyteller in its own right, its flickering light casting shadows that give form to dreams, fears, and hopes. In the ancient world, where conflict and turmoil often shaped the course of history, the hearth offered a sanctuary, a quiet space where peace could be nurtured and disputes gently laid to rest. The hearth was much more than a fire for warmth or cooking. It was a sacred circle of calm, a place where tempers cooled and understanding grew. It was here that families found the strength to heal wounds both visible and unseen. Within the soft glow of the hearth fire, voices softened, and the noise of the outside world faded away. The flickering flames invited patience, reflection, and the gentle unfolding of reconciliation. In the home, disagreements, whether between siblings, spouses, or neighbors, were often brought to the hearth, where all parties gathered to listen and speak with respect. The hearth's steady warmth fostered a sense of shared belonging, reminding all who gathered that they were bound by ties deeper than conflict. The sacred fire itself was a silent mediator, its presence encouraging harmony and balance. It was said that to quench the hearth's flame was to invite discord. To tend it with care was to honor peace. In larger communities, the hearth's role as a symbol of unity extended beyond the household. Communal fires were kindled during festivals and meetings, their glow a beacon calling people together, bridging divides and fostering dialogue. In councils and gatherings, representatives might light a shared fire, affirming their commitment to cooperation and mutual respect. The hearth's calming presence provided a space where differences could be aired with gentleness, and where compromise and understanding might emerge like new sparks in the embers. In myth and legend, stories often highlight the hearth as a place where divine and mortal conflicts found resolution. Gods, who might otherwise clash with thunder and fury, are sometimes depicted retreating to the hearth's quiet embrace, where their tempers cooled and bonds were renewed. Hestia herself embodies the spirit of peace. As the goddess who avoids conflict and seeks harmony, she is a gentle reminder that the strongest power is often found in stillness and care. Her flame is a symbol of stability in a world prone to change, a beacon guiding hearts back to calm and connection. Even in times of great upheaval, the hearth remains a sanctuary, a place where all who enter can find a moment's rest, a shared warmth, and the possibility of reconciliation. As night falls and the world grows quiet, the hearth's fire burns softly, carrying the promise that peace is always within reach. It is a quiet, steady light that invites us to pause, to listen, and to remember that beneath all conflict lies a shared desire for harmony. In the gentle crackle of flames, in the warmth that wraps around us like a soft blanket, we find the heart of resolution. Here, in the hearth's embrace, peace is not just an ideal, but a lived reality, a gift kindled by care, nurtured by presence, and held steady by love. As we reach the gentle close of this journey through the quiet world of Hestia, goddess of the hearth, we pause to reflect on the lasting legacy she has left behind, a legacy not of grand battles or thunderous proclamations, but of steady warmth, enduring peace, and sacred homecoming. Hestia's eternal flame symbolizes more than a fire kept burning in ancient temples or humble homes. It embodies a universal truth that in the heart of human experience lies a need for connection, stability, and sanctuary. Through countless centuries, this flame has flickered softly, passing from one generation to the next, a silent witness to the unfolding story of humanity. Her flame kindled the hearts of ancient Greece, glowing steadily amid the rhythms of daily life, ceremony, and family. It was a light that welcomed strangers, soothed the weary, and anchored the restless. Though the worship of Hestia has faded into history, her spirit remains alive in the quiet moments that shape our lives, the lighting of a candle at dusk, the warmth of a fireplace on a cold evening, the gathering of loved ones around a shared meal. The eternal flame is a reminder that no matter how far we travel or how much the world changes, there is a place within us that longs for home, a sacred space where love, care, and peace are nurtured like the softest ember. Hestia's legacy invites us to honor these spaces in our own lives, to tend our hearths with mindfulness and kindness, to create sanctuary amid chaos, and to hold sacred the bonds that tie us together. In art, literature, and ritual, the image of the hearth continues to inspire. It whispers of homecomings, of beginnings and endings, of the quiet power found in gentle presence. In this age of rush and noise, the eternal flame shines as a beacon of calm, a gentle call to slow down, breathe deeply, and reconnect with the simple, sacred rhythms of life. And so, as we close this chapter, we carry forward Hestia's gift, the knowledge that the warmest light is often the one kindled within, nurtured by care, and shared in silence. Her flame is not only a symbol of the past, but a living force in the present, inviting us all to gather close, find rest, and keep the hearth of our hearts burning bright. May this eternal flame guide you gently into quiet peace, and may the warmth of Hestia's hearth remain with you always. And so, dear listener, the day of Hestia draws to its quiet close. While the world spins with noise and motion, her flame remains steady, not grand, not loud, but always there, a quiet promise in the night. In every home where a lamp is lit, in every meal shared between friends, in every prayer whispered into the warmth of firelight, Hestia is present, watching, listening, offering peace. As you drift now into your own sleep, may her calm presence settle gently beside you, like warm blankets drawn across your shoulders, like soft ashes glowing after the fire fades. You are safe. The hearth still glows. Good night.
you.